My name's Sue. I have a company called Maverick Pilates Movement. I combine personal training, Pilates, and other movement and stretch disciplines kind of under one house.
Nice. And do you have a physical location or do you go to different locations?
So I base myself out of a specific gym where I freelance from. So my clients come to there, or I go to their own homes, and then I do a couple of Pilates classes online as well.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Any aspirations for to have your own space, or have you been there, done that, and now you're here, sort of thing?
I guess it's interesting for me. I'm merging my worlds of Pilates and personal training together. So I love to lift like heavy things as well.
Yes.
So maybe opening, I toyed in between, like, I think lockdown 2 and 3, one of them, I started to look at taking my own premises on and opening a small boutique Pilates studio.
Yes.
But it didn't really feel that authentic to how I train people. So I think ideally I'd like a multitude of different equipment that we can use depending on what people need on that specific day.
Yes. I hear you. I think at one point, like I've never really been one for bricks and mortar personally, but I think when I did start to explore it, I realized that the space would have to be so big and so expensive that it just almost wasn't feasible unless I had like 19 people working for me to cover all those costs, right? Like,
Totally. And I think
yeah.
there's a lot to be said about dipping into different places as well. So
Mhm.
with my own training, I train across 4 or 5 different places, depending on what I'm training on that day. Some are
Yes.
very zen and lovely and calming. Others are crazy and full of really heavy things and terrifying people. So again, I tend to like go depending on what I'm looking for. And I think it gives you different experiences, different environments. You meet different people who make you think about things in a really different way. So I really like that
Mm.
mix and match too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so if you could just share that story about your client and that perspective on coaching, 'cause that ties into some of what I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah. So I literally just came from training one of my clients at the gym clinic, which is where I'm based. And she made a comment to me about how lucky I was as a coach to be able to get free coaching. And I train with another personal trainer. He's actually on here, so I'll have to say really nice things about him. He's awesome.
Yes.
But I train with another coach, and I was saying, I pay that coach for his time because I expect you to pay for my time. So if I'm taking somebody else's time, I'm going to pay the person for that. And
Mhm.
I think sometimes maybe clients, maybe other coaches don't realize that too. As anybody in the fitness environment, we're always upskilling, we're always taking courses, training with other people, and that's part of our development. And it does cost us
Yes.
money. I think people forget.
Right. But then also the side of just like it's the excuses part too, right? Like, I mean, well, if I had a personal trainer with me all the time, then I'd be in shape all the time. Or if I had this, you know what I mean? Like there's a sense
Yeah,
of using those things as their excuse as to why they're not where they are in terms of their goals.
totally. And I always say, like, I always have,
Jamesy.
I always have clients say to me, like, you're so lucky you work in a gym. That's why you're so fit. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of like, that bit when you finish work in the office and you really want to go home. If somebody said you could hang out with a photocopier for an extra 2 or 3 hours and not get paid, would you be like super stoked, or would you be like heading on out for cocktails? And
Right.
that's what we do. And maybe that's also why I like chopping and changing locations a bit sometimes, because it's nice to train somewhere where you don't work. Um, but yeah, I think it's sometimes for us trainers, it's kind of harder to motivate ourselves to purely train for ourselves rather
Yes.
than just to learn something new. And I try
That is
and
hard.
yeah, I
Yeah.
try I try and separate those two things. So I know you've actually had my reformer teacher on here before, Julie Driver. So I work really closely
Yes.
with her. So she's
Yes.
been taking me through my reformer qualification, and I actually do 2 hours with her a week, back to back.
Mhm.
1 hour is really selfish, where it's like, what does my body need today? Make me feel better.
Yes.
Show me the things I didn't even know were a thing. And then the second
Mhm.
hour is I take a classical class. I observe how she cues. I use that with my clients, and I use that to become a better teacher. So those two things are
Yes.
really, really different.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's even like my workout just the other night morning. And it's like, I want to record it so I can take notes and I can like use them later, almost like going to a dance club. So I can pick up these new dance moves to use at the different club the next night, sort of thing. And there's another side of me that wants to just have like, I mean, obviously the camera on, but like,
Yeah.
don't worry about remembering it. Don't worry about trying to memorize it. Like, don't worry about trying to figure out the sequence. Don't worry about listening to your cues so that you can use those cues. Just get in your own body for a moment.
And that is why I think it's really important for coaches to have coaches, because I don't have to think that much. Sometimes I
Yep.
can't think because I'm too tired. But,
Right.
like it's not my responsibility to remember how many reps or what I'm doing next or if that next bit of equipment's free. I just get to switch off and train for me and push myself to my like past where I think I can go. And I think that's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah. So do you do like partner workouts with other like trainers or like Pilates people or whatever it is? Like, do you use that in those times when like you don't want to be paying for a session?
So I'm a big supporter. I think, like we're not always in a position where it's financially viable for us to hire a coach, right?
Right.
In
Right.
reality, because our job is up and down a lot of the time. So sometimes if I'm in that situation or just to get new experience, I always try and do a reciprocal thing. So
Yes.
it might be, for example, I'm doing a leg session with another trainer next week who
Hmm.
hates training legs. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't mind training legs. So if I come with you, you're on the hook to train legs one day, but you can also
Right.
teach me some new stuff that maybe I don't usually have in my leg training. So let's see how we both program it and learn something new.
Yes.
Likewise, I tend to hang out with a lot of guys that are like super strong, which is a nice byproduct of my life, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah.
But they tend to be not very mobile or flexible. So it's like, okay, you teach me how to do a different lift, and I'll give you a stretch workout, or I'll get you on a reformer. We'll do some Pilates, whatever it is that you think maybe I can bring you to the table that you don't currently
Right.
have. Let's
Yeah.
work that way.
Nice. I have two comments here I want to read, and then I have a question for you here. So,
Okay.
Catherine Jeffrey Pilates says, when I was 21 and worked in the gym, I was very unfit. I used to go and sit on the roof and smoke, and yes, right? It's like that happens. And then Lisa is saying, I never worked in the gym. I never worked out at the gym I used to work at. Clients always come up to me asking questions about my personal workout. See, I would have like headphones in and no music playing
I do that all the time, all
just
the
to like,
time.
yeah, or have like a half scowl on my face. So I'd be like, okay, I'll talk to you later because like I'm really focused. No, but yeah, I don't know. I was able to work out occasionally like that. Well, actually, the other thing is too, I work out really early. So like if
Yeah.
it's like 5 a.m., then there's usually not that many people bother me at that point too, right? So
I think there's actually a golden hour for trainers to train, and it's usually between 2 and 4. Everybody
yes,
else, client wise, is at work or gearing up for what they're doing that evening. And pretty much the only people you'll see on the gym floor are the trainers who just
yes,
don't want to talk to each other because they've
right.
talked to people all day long.
All day
And I
long.
love training in that little sweet spot.
Yes, so true. So for the person who says Pilates is all I need, you can find it all in the Pilates work. You don't need to get on the weight floor, all those different things. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
So, from a client perspective, this is actually how I became a personal trainer. So, I've been a Pilates teacher for maybe 10, 11 years now, I think. It's been
Okay.
a while, longer than I give myself credit for. And I always used to get asked at the end of the session by my regular clients, it's like, how long do I need to do Pilates for to get arms like you? And I'd be like, you're not going to get the arms that I've got from Pilates. I'm really sorry. I can like try and work you quite hard, but this
Hmm.
comes from a whole different thing. And then they would
Yes.
ask me, could I program them some stuff to do in the gym? And I was like, well, I'm not qualified for that. You can come and train with me for fun, but
Hmm.
that's not my world. And I started to realize actually how I trained myself really wasn't how I showed up as a teacher, because I think everybody just thought I did a lot of Pilates and this is what happened. So that's why I
Right.
actually retrained as a personal trainer. And
Interesting.
and I believe those two things can go hand in hand really well. I think if
Hmm.
you're somebody who's really into Pilates, I think strength and conditioning can assist and help your Pilates practice and vice versa. And actually, the coach that I work with, he's an amazing coach, not only in heavy lifting, but stretch mobility. He's probably the most flexible person I know and probably the strongest person I know. And that's one
Hmm.
of the reasons I went to him, because he has an appreciation of all the different disciplines and
Oh,
how they tie
yes.
in together. So
Right.
I think I think shouldn't be able to do, you shouldn't really try and do one without the other. But
Hmm.
sometimes, like we talked about this the other day, I think I'm like a gateway drug into what the other discipline is that the person doesn't do. So,
Yes,
so
same. Yeah.
I've been told
Yeah.
by a lot of clients that if they come to a gym and I'm one of the personal trainers, the reason they select me is they think I'm the safe option because I'm a Pilates teacher, so I'll do everything safe and my technique will be really exacting and I'll be very gentle. And then
Hmm.
they come for a few weeks and then they realize they should have gone with the loud shouty guy in the corner because he's like way
Yes.
nicer than I am. I sneak people in. But it
Yes.
does, I think it makes you more approachable, and definitely having good technique when you're lifting is paramount. And I see clients who've never been on a gym floor but have done Pilates, and they take to it so well because they're so used to it not just
Absolutely.
being a kind of endurance sport all the time. They're like, is my elbow in the right place? Am I using my shoulder? Should I be feeling this here or here? They know where the pelvis
They're
is.
so
All of
body
those things.
aware. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, absolutely. The
So
sorry, no, please go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
The yeah, that gateway analogy is great because like with my studio being on like in a clinic and also a gym floor, I have people who came to me specifically for weights, and then I'm slowly like reeling them into the Pilates studio, and then I have people who would just come for Pilates, and I'm like reeling them onto the gym floor, right? Like from both sides. It's not like one is the lead to the other. It's like if you're planted in the one space, then it's like you're introducing them to the other. And whether it's like months in the weight room and then months in the Pilates studio, or half an hour and then the other half hour, like there's some kind of marrying of the two that I'm trying to integrate into everyone's programming.
Yeah, and I do it a lot in the warm up for like where people would traditionally stretch. We do a lot of Pilates work.
Sure.
If people want to do core, it's Pilates, but we call it a core workout.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, I'll give people active rest periods, and that will be an element of Pilates too.
Yes.
Likewise, if I'm doing Pilates, getting people to use kind of small weights and things like that, so they just start to get a bit more used to the movement pattern. I do things a lot, like I'm a bit sneaky as a Pilates teacher, where a lot of the time I don't really teach Pilates. Like a Turkish get up is an acceptable Pilates move in one of my mat work classes. People
Yes.
don't know what that is until they come to the gym, and it's like, now we're going to do this like for real.
Yes.
Um, but when you can translate a lot of the exercises, I think, from the gym, like to the reformer, for example, like a leg press is your footwork, which we open with, right? So all these
Mhm.
movements already feel very familiar to people when they get started.
Right. I think, at the end of the day, like one of your posts, you're talking about how it's like you're giving people a break from life. You're allowing them to just kind of get into their body and just kind of love life and all those things. I, I feel my job really is just to have people get excited about movement and the
Yes.
potential that their body has,
And not be scared. That's one of
and to
my
not be
big
scared. Yeah,
It's one of my biggest
yeah.
things. I work a lot with physios, and I've started to realize there's a type of physio that I work with. All the physios I work with are amazing at their jobs. Like one of the guys that's probably the closest physio I work with now is the physio for a Formula One team. Before that, the UK gymnastics team. So he knows his stuff. But he's always from the get go taught me to be very, very careful with my words because he's like, sometimes without even realizing, he will say something that will invoke fear in people for the rest of their movement history. And and
Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
it's really interesting. And I started to think about it in terms of exercises I'm uncomfortable with myself. So I hate a barbell squat. My body is just not designed for that movement pattern. It doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
But I think one of the reasons I'm quite apprehensive about it is the person who tried to coach me on it first, even when I just had the barbell and I could easily manage that weight, would hover over me just in case anything happened. So it acutely made me like really scared just to have a bar by myself. And it took me a long time to like deprogram that. Like
Yes.
likewise, if you're told like you shouldn't do this, if you do this again, your back might go again. You're never going to
Mm.
move. And you know,
Yes.
I don't know, like how much you did online over lockdown, but for me, over the period of all the different lockdowns, the gym I originally worked at closed, the Pilates studio I closed, so everything changed for me. And in the first lockdown, it was just a hustle. It was just like I need something to do. I live on my own, So I'm either going to stare at the wall or maybe I can give some Pilates classes online. I've
Yes.
never done it before. This feels terrifying. I don't know what Zoom is like or how anything works, but we'll figure
Right.
it out.
Hmm.
And before you know it, I had an online Pilates studio. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. And,
Yes.
you know, I had PT clients online as well. And I've seen it more so in Pilates than PT because we're a bit limited with equipment. But clients I already knew who used to have like a gauge of where they thought they were in class. So there's one lady, she's in her 70s, amazing, amazing woman. And she always like, I was always like, you can do so much more than you think. You're in like the beginner's class. You've been in the beginner's class for a really long time now. I
Yes.
think you should move up a level. And also just know the teacher is still me. So
Hmm.
I know what you can do and what you can't do. If something doesn't, if you don't like the look of something, I'll give you something else to do. Nobody will know. Nobody will care. You know,
Right.
let's do it. And then when I launched online, she used to come to my classes. And now she has like the strongest teaser in the entire class. And I think a lot of it is as much as even like clients and teachers were both daunted by online,
Yes.
she suddenly isn't aware of anybody else in
Hmm.
the studio except for me and her. So if I'm
Yes.
looking at her going, you're doing great, let's try it again, the worst thing that's going to happen is she's going to just lie on her lounge floor. Like nobody's
Yes.
going to stop and go, why hasn't she done that, etc. So
Yes.
I found
Right.
that's been quite liberating.
Hmm. How's that translated to your in-person work? Because I mean, what you're doing is instilling confidence in people,
Yeah.
right? Like, does that change your strategies? Like, you probably had like a bag of tools for getting people to there, but now it's like, do you feel like that's changed the way that you strategize with people to get them to the place?
I'm very lucky that all of my, well, the majority of my in-person clients have been with me for a very long time.
Okay.
Even the ones that have been for a moderately short time, we've developed trust. And I think that's the number one most important thing that is between
Yes.
a coach and a client. My
Mhm.
clients know I'm never going to do anything reckless that I don't believe that they can do, that I'm doing it just to show off how, like this new thing that I learned on the internet where you balance on a ball with whatever.
Right.
You know, I know what their goals are. I'm going to try and get them to their goals, and they trust me that I can help them. And if something goes wrong, they know I can hold the weight or I can get them out of that position safely. Like nobody's going to die, hopefully. And so once you've got
Yes.
that level of trust, then it's really easy. And,
Mhm.
you know, I think the delivery is a really important part as well. So if I cue you in a deadlift and I'm like, now I want you to be really careful of your back now because this is really heavy. So if you lift it wrong, you might
Yeah,
rupture a
right.
disc. So we're really going to have to
Right.
focus here. And if I see anything slightly wrong, I'm going to tell you to put it down and I don't want you to carry on. And we'll like start again. Or we say, okay, this is like literally 5 kilos heavier than you were lifting before. That's like 5 bottles of wine. I'm pretty sure you've lifted 5 bottles of wine before. All you're going to do is stand up and then put it down. That feels a very
Mhm.
different scenario to be in, right?
Yes. That's powerful, those words, intention with our words, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like words stick with people way after they're said and
Yes.
are very hard to get rid of once somebody's programmed into that way. Like for example, for me, I remember about 8 years ago being told I'm really tight in my hips. So every time I do a workout, I must open up my hips more. I'm super flexible in my hips. That story isn't true to me anymore, but in my head,
Yes.
it's still there. The first excuse I go to, probably not good at that because of my hips. It's like, there's nothing wrong with them. You can move.
Yep, I'm sure everyone in the chat's like me, right? Like you hear those messages and then yeah. And then even when they're become like they may have been true, but then you correct it. We're good enough that we figure out how to change it, correct it, and then we're still hung up on that excuse, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Julie has been also fundamental in this because there's been various different things I've learned in my reformer training.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely like towards the latter end of last year, I just thought I was rubbish. I was terrible at everything. Like I'm terrible on the reformer. I'm the worst in class. Nothing works. I'll never understand how to do this particular exercise. Why am I so rubbish? And I had an epiphany this week where I was like, I haven't thought about that for a really long time. And now I just recognize, do you know what? Your back's just a bit stiff today. This one's going to be tough for you today. It doesn't mean you're like a bad person. Maybe just something else is happening in your body.
Mm.
And you sometimes we can be our own worst critics.
Always.
People
Yeah.
can people can say things to you, right? And you can either hold on to them forever and let it shape your future, probably with that person not even thinking they've ever once said anything to you, or you kind of
Right.
take what you need from it and you just let it go.
Yep. I call it extending grace to ourselves
I like that.
because we're in the business of encouraging our people, and just talking them off the ledge all day long. But then for ourselves, our self-talk is so rough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we figure, well, I can handle it. I'm an athlete or whatever it is. So you have this kind of this tough shell to yourself, but then we need to be gracious towards ourselves at the same time to be able to move forward, right?
Yeah. And I think also there's identifying there's two parts to you. There's your version as a coach, and then there's your version of whatever exercise sport thing is that you're participating in.
Hmm.
And if an exercise isn't going well for you in your own personal practice, it doesn't make you a terrible coach.
Yes.
And sometimes there's that kind of struggle where I should be able to do this because I'm a coach in this. Why can't I do this? And it's like,
Hmm.
my body's different to your body, that's different to most of my clients' bodies. So we shouldn't all we're not at the same place. We don't have the same struggles. Our bodies
Yes.
have been through different things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Too funny. Catherine's comment. A Brit that says, "What would Elsa do? Would do the trick. She would let it go." True. See, are these some of your people coming in here, like JH Physio and
Yes.
Christopher on PT?
Yes.
Nice. There's a comment here earlier from Lisa that says, "I think you need more than Pilates. I'm a personal trainer too, and we need a well-rounded routine. I love TRX hit and lifting heavy stuff. Yeah, me too, totally. That's well, I was saying this yesterday too, like Sue, like the people that we're surrounding ourselves with, the clients that we have really dictate where we're going to take our learning as well, right?
Yeah.
So, the different modalities that you picked up are going to lend to the needs of your core people, right? So,
100%. And I think I like to also let people just play with things. So even if I took an amazing series of courses on animal flow. I'm terrible at it. I love it. I'm very enthusiastic. My teacher just moves so beautifully. He's so elegant. I am none of those things,
yeah, but you're
but I'm like,
flexible, but not like,
I'm not graceful. I think everybody would be quite comfortable confirming that I know on this. But I really enjoyed the process, and I was like, look, guys, like I don't train people in this. I'm doing it. It's kind of fun. I'm going to show you. We're going to do a couple of little drills from it. If you like it, I've got an amazing coach. You might want to go, but I think this might be your vibe. And it
yes,
and I think it's also, like you can. One of the best ways I find of trying to find out what my clients' true goals are, because a lot of people would be like, I'd like to get fitter and lose a few pounds. And it's like,
yes.
what does that actually mean? Like, why do you want to do those things?
Why?
Let's
Yeah.
and find why. And then it might be, well, I want to do that because I really want to get into cold water swimming and I feel really self-conscious in the water. And it's like, okay, let's make your strength training designed to make you a better swimmer. There's loads of things we can do with that will tie into your goal. They'll still get you to where you want to be, but we're going to make it more of a process driven experience. And I think,
Okay.
being flexible with that, like I don't train any of my clients in the way that I train myself because it's not relevant to what their end goals are. You
Right.
know, recognizing that difference as well, I think is really important.
Hmm. James is here to rescue you from yourself, saying, "Yes, you are graceful."
James made me decide I need to marry a Persian yoga instructor. So if you know any, feel free to
Okay.
let me know. I'm still
I'll,
looking,
I'll,
James.
all right. I'll put it out in the chat and see what I can find. Like, maybe I'll have you on for a conversation. I'll interview you. I always thought it'd be a fun matchmaker, like be able to ask these questions and stuff like that. Wouldn't it be fun to just matchmake for people? So what is your I could do that. My wife was saying I could match people with a car that's perfect for their personality too, right? Like there's something about just getting a handle on a person from a few questions. I think
Yeah.
I could do it.
But don't you think that's our job every single day? Every time we meet a client,
Absolutely.
like one of my clients is like, you don't, I feel like you need to be harder with me. And I'm like, I feel like if I'm hard with you, you're going to get really upset. Like, I think you like the idea of a shouting instructor, and I can give you one of those. I'm not that
Hmm.
on the whole. Um, but you want to have a go. I've got lots of people that can feel that. And she's like, no, I changed my mind. I don't like it. And so you've got to find those. What are
Right.
what are the things? And I also have clients who just have a nice hour with me. Like they don't train particularly hard. And when I first started training with them, I felt terrible because I'm like, I don't think you're getting your
You're
money's
not getting your
worth.
money's worth. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I just want to have a nice time. I'm not that bothered how many reps we do. Just want to be out
Yeah.
of the house for an hour. And it's like, okay, I need to like not think that what I would want from a session is what you need.
That recalibration is so challenging, right? Because like you get so excited for people. Like I'm guilty of that. I'm more excited about their goals than they are sometimes, right? You have to like reel it back in to go at their pace, right? So
100%. But then it's really cool. Like I get more motivated when my clients smash their goals than
yes.
when I do. So I have one
Hmm.
particular client, her ambition was to deadlift her body weight. And we've been working towards it just really slowly and methodically. And the day she did it, she didn't realize. Told her
Yes.
I told her
Yeah.
that basically I was going to film each of her sets so we could look at her technique, tinker, so that next week we'd be ready for the big lift. Because I'm like, I might
Yes.
freak her out a little bit if I tell her that we're doing it tonight, whether she wants to or not. And I also wanted to kind of see, like, how's her lifting today? Is her head in the right place? Some
Yeah.
days, I'm sure with your training, some days you're like, I'm killing it. Other days you're like, I shouldn't have come. This is not
Right.
going well.
Yes.
And she was smashing it and she was doing really good. So I just like, she just stick on another five, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, you've lifted 10 kilos heavier than you anticipated. And I was so excited. I had literally no idea.
Yes. Yes. It's so funny. I have some clients who like are perpetually they just don't care. And I'm like,
Yeah.
look, we did today. And they're like, well, whatever. It's like, wah, 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 wah. I'm like, no, but we didn't last week. You couldn't do that. We're doing it now. And they're like, okay, like you can just chill.
But I don't know about you, but I've realized subconsciously, I tend to, over the course of my training day, balance out the energy of my clients. So I'll have one client who's like an excitable puppy who wants to do all of the things. And maybe I have to, like, if anything, rein them in a little bit. I've
Yes.
got like, then I'll offset it with a client who's like there to do the job. It'll get done. We'll have a good time. And then
Yes.
probably a client where I'm going to have to do all the heavy lifting and like really G them up to get excited.
Yes.
And if I misdo it and I have like too many excitable puppies on one day, I'm exhausted. By lunchtime, I need to have a lie down.
Yes. Absolutely. Or me being like a really early person, if I have someone that requires a lot of energy and they're like my 1 o'clock person, when I'm like begging for a nap, I'm just like, I just can't do it. Or the day sponsored by coffee at that point because
Yeah.
it's like, I'm not gonna.
I'm annoyingly chipper for my morning clients, a bit too much
Yes.
though, I think sometimes.
Yes.
And I'm the
Yeah.
same. By the time I get to the evening, I'm like, okay, we can do this.
Yep. I wrote down the word incongruence. When you were talking earlier about how the way that you present
Mhm.
in terms of what you're teaching your clients and like how you actually train your body, and just as there's like this incongruence with it, right? Like we were telling
Yeah.
people, let's show up 3 times a week for Pilates, you're gonna feel great. It's like, well, will I look like you? No, actually, you're not gonna look like me if I do that 3 times a week, right?
Yeah.
Like, so that conversation is just one of those conversations I'm having with my clients too, where it's like, well, what are your goals? What are you chasing after? And trying to get them around their goals, trying to get them to center on their goals as opposed to the outcome of doing the exercise, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
And
I,
then, yeah,
I find it such a bigger motivator if you can put a handle on something. Um, so as I said, I tend to, I've had quite a lot of weight loss clients that have come to me. I don't particularly like getting people too fixated on the scales. We'll go through their
yes,
nutrition. They know what they need to be in for a calorie deficit. We like tick all of those things. I hold them accountable. I have a WhatsApp group where they message me every Sunday, like check in, tell me how they're feeling. If it hasn't gone well, like, do they want to change anything? Are they comfortable with that, etc.? But
mm-hmm.
then I get them targeted on what we're going to physically do, what's going to be the
Do,
thing. And
yes,
so for some people, it might be you're just going to make sure you show up once a week for the next 8 weeks. That might be enough. It doesn't have to be anything like
Hmm.
too heady. For others, it might be an event that they're doing. It might be to be able to run for an hour. It might be to play with their kids without getting breathless, or it might be to
Right.
deadlift their own body weight. But we
Sure.
find we find the thing and the trigger, and we've talked about it between us as well. Like for me at the moment, I'm trying to figure out what that is for me, and it's really hard. I've
Hmm.
started to get a better appreciation from my clients now, where I'm like, do I feel comfortable with that as a goal? Is that what
Yes.
motivates me? And yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. Like when you say like, do I feel comfortable with that as a goal? I think of my son who is trying to figure out what program he's going to do for university.
Hmm.
And I had to keep telling him like, you can make another goal after this goal. Like this isn't the final goal that you're making for your entire life. Like we get so paralyzed by making like we're afraid to make the wrong goals, so we don't make any goals.
Yep.
I was like, why don't you just make the goal and then change it if this isn't the goal for you? You know what I mean? Like sometimes we get so paralyzed in trying to make the right decision that we make no decision.
Yeah. Or have the courage to walk away from a goal if it's not serving you. So
Yeah,
my my
well
goals have
said.
changed. My goals have changed quite a lot. I used to fundamentally do. I used to train and love training. It's like I want to do something different. And I got really into strongman training and I love it so much. I still do it once a month. It's like my guilty pleasure.
Okay.
Um, I know, I'm weird.
I
Um,
know I just nodded to it like yeah, I could see
yeah.
that, but everyone else must be like, yeah, that's like saying I want to floss for joy. But
But
eh,
I do, I love it. But the one rep max is not my friend. Like I'm
okay.
45. If I hurt myself, there's a chance that's going to linger for quite a while. Also,
Yes.
my job involves me being able to move. So if I have a bad back, not smart either.
Right.
Um, but also, what I learned was my mind was really willing, but my body would break. So in my head, I'm like, I'm trying this. If it kills me, and then be like, okay, now something really hurts. So
Yes.
the next goal was like, let's just get back to training in an enjoyable way and not injure ourselves or be broken.
Hmm.
So that's why I've been training a little bit more kind of bodybuilder style, very isolated
Yes.
exercises, doing a lot more mobility work. And I'm probably a lot stronger now than I was when I was doing the strongman training, ironically.
Okay.
But in my head, I still have a goal of a deadlift weight that I want to get to. And I was trying to do it before Christmas, and I had 2 attempts, and I got 2 PBs in the 2 times. I was
Hmm.
like, do I push to try and get it done for Christmas? I had like a week to go. I was like, I'll probably do it, or I could already hurt myself. And it's like, you haven't even trained deadlifting for like 9 months. So why do you think now's the time to smash the goal you set 3 years ago? It's like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
let's just leave that. We'll decide if after Christmas we want to go back and do that.
Hmm.
Um, but now I'm contemplating training like more aesthetically and body composition wise rather
Okay.
than for strength. And for me, that's a really big change because I
Hmm.
try and get my clients to do the exact opposite a lot of the time.
Right. Yes. Well, I think it even takes courage to talk about that in our cancel culture around like body positivity and all those things to when we start to talk about those things for my
Yeah.
clients as well, like we have these conversations and it's almost like you have to reassure that it's a safe place to say, I know I'm 120 pounds or 127 pounds. I want to go to 122. Like you feel like you're not allowed to say that anymore.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a few different misconceptions as well. Like this notion of training for aesthetics isn't it's not an easy journey. It's as hard, if not harder, than strength training.
Hmm.
You're doing things that are very uncomfortable. So, if I want to gain muscle, the first thing I'm going to do is bulk up, eat a lot more food, maybe not feel that comfortable in my body, especially if I've been programming myself to look a certain way.
Hmm.
And then when I get to that desired level, then I cut. So I'm not eating very much. And again, I'm imagining that's not going to be a very happy time for me either. So
Right.
the amount of work that goes into it, it's almost like a full-time job of looking at calories, your expenditure, how you're training, etc. So there's a lot of work in it, as opposed to I think people just think it's an easier way to go. So it's
Right.
it's
Right.
it's interesting. I'm kind of interested to see, considering now my body is fixed, could my mind handle that journey rather
Yes.
than it being the thing that led it before.
Right. So can I ask what, like, why would you want to have, like, why would you want to go after an aesthetic goal? Like, what's the reason, rationale behind that?
Because I think if I continue to just purely be strength driven one rep max, the whole purpose of a one rep max is to go to failure pretty much, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's just not a smart way for me to train.
Right.
I've contemplated training like for more of an event, but
Hmm.
I like doing things that make me feel a bit uncomfortable, and I like learning new things. So this, I
Mm,
think, would be a really interesting way of learning how to train myself as well, just to see what it feels like and go through that process, you know?
absolutely. Absolutely. I just wanted to just tie off that last comment about like weight and safe place stuff to
Yeah,
say, I always start with people with the notion of contentment. Like, are you content with where you are now? Do
yeah.
you like yourself now? Let's start from there. Like, we can't start from a place of discontentment with any of the things that we've been saying.
Or starting with any assumptions. I never expect anybody when they walk into the gym, no matter what their size, shape, experience level, I would
Hmm.
never look at a client and go, so are you looking to lose weight? What's your motivation? I wait for people to tell me, like, if you
Hmm.
just want to be, you want to feel fitter, that's going to be our goal. We're not even going to touch the scales. I don't, unless a client specifically tells me they want to get to a certain weight and we'll work out what's a safe rate of losing weight. I don't ask any of my clients their weight. I don't weigh them, you know,
Yep.
not
Right.
interested. If it's not part of what they want,
Right.
why?
Absolutely. I don't like the like before and after picture notion as well, where it's like,
Yeah.
whether it's a weight and you get to this target weight and you're like, look how awesome I look, and then life happens and then you're back up from that weight and then you hate yourself because you're not at that ideal weight and it was almost unavoidable based on life circumstances, and it just gets messy, right? Like, and I think, what we're saying here is like when you're in your own head and understand who you are, that sets up for this journey where you can truly enjoy the journey, right? Like, it's not
Yeah.
just about getting to that number, that PR, that weight, that body fat percentage, that race. It's about enjoying that journey and that process.
Do you know what? Maybe it's the blinkeredness of who I follow on Instagram as opposed to necessarily a change in the world. So I'm quite
Hmm.
selective in which trainers and coaches I follow. They tend to be
Yep.
people either I know or respect or learn from. But there's definitely been a shift where if there is a before and after picture, it's not necessarily associated with weight. So it might be, here's how much shoulder mobility this client has now got, or this is how much deeper their squat is.
Hmm.
Or if anything, it might be more of a recomposition of their body shape.
Yep.
So this person came to me at X weight. We've actually worked to put on X kilos more because
Hmm.
they wanted to feel stronger. So it feels like it's a little bit more positive now. But as I say, I'm
Yes.
quite aware that that's probably because I just unfollow people that do the look how
Hmm.
amazing Joyce looks after she's not eaten for 4 weeks and done a lot of burpees. That doesn't interest me.
Right. It's an art, right? Like when we're talking about, like, I've said that earlier this week too, like the best conditioning coaches and people, when they're on the show and I'm having conversations with them and I ask them a question, it's like the answer to everything is it depends.
Yeah. 100%. And I think, just going back to the body image thing, I I wrote a piece on it on my Instagram a while ago, actually. As a coach, people feel like they can comment on your body all the time. It feels
Mm.
very acceptable. So I've had a client who once told me they wanted to have arms like me, but not quite as manly because it was too much. And
Oh,
I'm
thank
like,
you.
part of me was like, I'm gonna refute that. And then I'm like, do you know what? And I just looked at that person, I'm like, it's taken me a really long time to get these arms, and you coming once a week, you're going to be fine, I promise. It's going to be okay.
Yes.
I've had other trainers who are technically brilliant, but for
Hmm.
various reasons don't physically train themselves. And people assume they must be a terrible coach because they're not as ripped as everybody else on the floor. And
Yeah,
it's a strange industry. I'm
it
you know
is.
I'm actually
Yeah.
I feel very relieved I came to the industry older rather than younger because
Right.
a lot more confidence. Like if you say that to me, that's okay. You know, I work really hard for this and I'm very happy with this whole thing. And some days I'm not, and that's also okay.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't approach one of my clients going, "Oh my God, you've let yourself go. I would not want this physique." You know, so why is it okay to do it back to me? I don't know.
They feel entitled because they figure we're strong enough that we could take it,
Oh,
or our body is our business card, so
yes.
we should be, like that whole rhetoric is just problematic. But
And I think that's probably maybe one of the reasons that would motivate me more to go for an aesthetic goal because I always tell all my clients all of the crazy stuff I'm trying. You know, I go through different modalities to learn things. Sometimes it might just be that is not for me ever.
yeah,
I will never do that again. It was an interesting journey, but no, no more. Other times I'm like, do you know, there's bits of this that it might not be for you, but there's a few things I learned that I think would really help your programming. And you
yes.
know, so I think trying these things is good, and challenging yourself is good. And you know,
Hmm. Yeah. We don't have that much time left, but I was meaning to ask you how you found Pilates.
so pre this world of fitness, I was a professional drinker. Uh,
Okay.
that was my job. I've always worked in global alcohol marketing, so I've kind of gone from one extreme to the other.
Strange. Yes.
A big part of my job back then was public speaking, and I hated it. Apparently, I was like good at it, but I'd have huge panic attacks beforehand. I'd play out in my head like if I walked off the side of the stage now, like did I have enough money in my account to still pay my rent? I was like the fear was real.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very intense. And I used to have to speak to over 1,000 people, like pretty much once a month. So I was like,
Yeah.
I've either got to get better at this.
Yeah.
And so I decided to get better. And I used to box and I really badly injured my shoulder. And I went to a Pilates class. And for the first 4 weeks, I thought it was rubbish because I was used to like training really hard, everything hurting,
Yes.
sweating. And now I'm doing this like thing with my arm and somebody's telling me my ribs are in the wrong place. I'm like, this is rubbish. And then 4 weeks later, I'm like, it's a miracle. My shoulder doesn't hurt. And it's like, okay, maybe it wasn't as rubbish as I thought. Maybe I'll stick doing
Hmm.
this. So then I thought, if I'm trying to get over this whole notion of being nervous about public speaking, how about I train as a Pilates teacher? Because standing in front of a group in my gym kit, talking about something I barely understand, is always going to be way worse than standing on stage and trying to sell people the latest vodka from Grey Goose. So that's how I went into it. And then when I
Nice.
qualified, I was like, well, I've got this qualification. I'll do a couple of classes at a Pilates studio, you know, because I've done it, so I should probably practice. And then I fell in love with it. I just adored helping people. And
Hmm.
then that's what suckered me in. It's like, okay, the more things that I can do now to make people feel good, I'm going to do.
Yes.
So that's when the PT thing came in. So yeah, a bit of a strange way into it, but
Yeah, it's funny. It's unconventional, but I always say like it's not about what you want to do when you grow up, it's who do you want to become,
yeah,
right? So what you've basically said is that you're a person who likes to better yourself, to improve yourself, and to challenge yourself, and you also like to help people feel good. So that could have expression right now in terms of movement, but that could be
yeah,
something else 10 years from now. But it's still going to be
totally.
true to who you are,
Yeah. I
you
sound
know?
pretty cool when you sum me up like that. I like
I think you're pretty cool.
it.
That's why we're having a conversation. That's why we're here. That's why you made the cut. The I have one of my old mentors said something to me, and a friend of mine reaffirmed that just last week. So I'm kind of coming back to this mindset. And they said to me, "You are not a personal trainer. You are a business owner, and your product happens to be fitness."
Hmm.
And at that point, I was just starting my business and he was really helping me. I'm actually celebrating 20 years. I registered personal victory 20 years ago today, like this year, 2002.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Yeah, but that was his line. He's like, "You're not a personal trainer. You are a business owner, and your product happens to be fitness." And it was speaking to the fact that I'm a person who encourages people, helps people, likes people, helping them to reach their full potential. And if I'm selling pens 5 years from now, I'm still going to be encouraging people, cheering people on, helping them to be better with the pen that they're buying from me, whatever it is, because I'm a business owner and my product is. And so I think that that sense of who we are is so much richer than what we do. And you can see that. That's, I'm sure you're making people feel good about what they were doing in your last industry as well.
Yeah, well, it was a very different
Yeah.
scenario that, if I'm honest, but yeah,
Yeah. Right. Right.
completely. But I
Hmm.
think I definitely think I've I've appreciated so many more of my characteristics in this role than any other role before. I think I didn't
Love it.
naturally know how much I just love people as a whole. Like
Hmm.
interacting with anybody, I just really enjoy the process. I learn something. Um, it might be I learn something that I'm like, I don't think I want to do that thing again, or I don't hold a similar view. But I think you garner information as you go through this journey of life, and all of
Yes.
those interactions make something better. But I think probably a lot of it came back to me over, especially the first lockdown. So in the UK, we were locked down for 12 weeks. It was kind of every 3 weeks, it was announced it would be another 3 weeks.
Yes.
Everything was closed. Everybody was really scared at that point because nobody really knew what this was. And I
Hmm.
think the relationship I had with my clients over that time, whether it was like, I told everybody at the very beginning, like, if you don't want to train with me at all, it's totally fine. If you want to just like call me and you want to have a chat just to, because you're not
Touch
feeling
base.
okay, feel
Yes.
free to do that too. Like, if
Hmm.
you're suddenly made redundant, or you don't have money, but you'd like to train, you think it's helpful for your mental health, tell me and I'll see what I can do for you. Like, we're
Yes.
all in this together. Like, and those relationships deepened so much over that period. And it wasn't about the fitness. Definitely at the beginning, we did some very mediocre workouts from my lounge to their lounges because none of us had anything. But it was
Yes.
just about that human connection. And I think we
Absolutely.
that's what we do as trainers is we connect with other humans, and I'd hope try and make their lives better. That's what I hope to do.
Hmm. Oh, that's like a big hug, that whole like soundbite.
No, it's true
Yes.
though. I think you can see it. You must, with 20 years experience, you can see people who are genuinely want to make a difference versus somebody who turns up and at somebody through a workout. It's very different. Very, very
Absolutely.
different.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so much more to say. Can we do a round two sometime soon?
I'd love that. I'd love that.
Yes. Because I
Maybe
just,
we
oh,
maybe
that's
we
good.
can maybe we can try and get James on board as well.
Yes, absolutely. We'll
Love that.
plan that out. Yes. Thank you so much. So, is that AGA Nutrition Fitness?
Aga.
AGA? Being a coach is so much more than just delivering sessions. Absolutely. Um, and someone saying, I believe we are getting better as an industry in that earlier comment there.
Yeah, for sure.
So good. All right. So yes, so thank you so much for joining me, Stu. Like, I'll message you afterwards. I'll show you how we can, replay this, and let's plan another time to continue this conversation.
Yeah, love that.
And to everyone who joined us, James, thank you for jumping in, cheering on your buddy. And Catherine, Katie, thank you to everyone who joined us today. All right, my friend. Well, enjoy your weekend, and we will be in
Thank you
touch
so
soon.
much. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much.
All
Bye, guys.
right. Bye.